and our top focus at this hour. In what could mark a major turning point for the global energy markets, a proposed US-Iran peace deal and the possible reopening of the Strait of Hormuz may dramatically reshape the crude oil supply flows and bring prices sharply lower in the coming weeks. Now, according to executives of Indian refining companies, if the agreement is formally signed and maritime movement through the strait resumes without any global disruptions, global crude supplies could begin normalizing quickly, potentially pushing benchmark Brent crude prices below $80 per barrel within just 2 to 3 weeks. The United States and Iran are said to have reached an understanding aimed at ending military confrontation, lifting the US naval blockade on Iran, and restoring navigation through the strategically critical Strait of Hormuz. Both sides have also reportedly agreed to continue negotiations for another 60 days to resolve outstanding issues related to Iran's nuclear program. Following the news of the breakthrough, Brent crude prices already reacted in the global market, falling nearly 5% to around $83 a barrel. Before the conflict, the region in the Gulf region accounted for nearly 40% of India's crude oil imports. However, after tensions escalated, supplies from several key producers were disrupted. While imports from Saudi Arabia and the UAE gradually recovered, shipments from Iraq, Kuwait and other producers remained under strain, tightening the supply chain for refiners across Asia, and that impact was felt across India. Industry officials now expect that once the strait reopens, oil tankers currently stranded in the Persian Gulf will resume deliveries, helping ease bottlenecks in the global shipping routes. Refinery executives say that the producers are also holding significant crude inventories in onshore storage, which could quickly be released once normal trade conditions return. Experts now believe that if both the US Navy and Iran's Revolutionary Guards adhere to the agreement and avoid provocations, global oil markets could stabilize within 15 to 20 days. In such a scenario, Brent crude could slip below the $80 per barrel mark, driven by improvised supply flow and easing geopolitical risk premiums. The return of Iranian crude to international markets, combined with additional output from OPEC plus producers, is expected to further increase supply and exert downward pressure on prices. For India, which relies heavily on Gulf energy imports, the geographical proximity of the region could translate into faster and more reliable crude shipments. Industry officials also suggest that India may reduce its dependence on longer distance supplies from countries like United States and Russia if Gulf flows normalize. The reopening of the strait could also reduce freight and insurance costs, which has surged during the conflict period. However, analysts caution that while crude oil markets may stabilize quickly, recovery in liquefied natural gas and refined petroleum products flows could take longer, as logistical disruptions in those segments may persist. Now, as diplomacy moves towards an energy and market response, all eyes now remain on the formal signing of the deal and whether the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil arteries, truly return to full operational normalcy. For more on this, I am being joined by Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, who is a defense and a geopolitical expert. He is with me on the broadcast, so welcome on the show. Mr. Kulkarni, the first question that I want to take you through is, do you think that in just coming weeks, let's say if we go by the reports, in 15 to 20 days, the oil crisis will finally see an end and India and the rest of the world can finally take a sigh of relief?
Definitely. It will make a difference. May not be about 3 weeks, but within a month, yes. Primarily because 80% of the crude from the Strait of Hormuz goes towards Asia. And that is China, India, Japan, and South Korea.
Correct.
As a result of which, we'll find that since most of the oil goes towards Asia, definitely in about 30 days' time, because as you rightly said, the distances being less, it will be very much easier. And once the stability of prices, as what has been is being assessed that the prices might go back, revert to 27th Feb 2026, if that be so, surely I think it will make a huge impact and a short supply. Because as again you were bringing it out, the 40% of it that we were dependent on, that was primarily because of the kind of restrictions and all that of things, sanctions that were being imposed. If everything goes normal, if things are eased off, you will find that India's reliance on the Strait of Hormuz for oil may even go up higher than 60%. For gas, in an LPG, in any case, we are dependent over 80 to 90%. Under these circumstances, if the Strait of Hormuz remains open, things are normal. The situation is not at all, it's absolutely peaceful, no war-like situation. Seafarers feel absolutely safe. All these oil tankers can move freely up and down. I'm sure it will make a difference, and that difference will be felt by the people in India, primarily because in India we're very sensitive to transportation costs being added to our product. As a result of which, if the things are stabilized, we find the transportation costs will not be added. Hence, this also helps the inflation not going high. If the inflation isn't there, things obviously stabilize. With the inflation comes the aspect of the rupee you find. The rupee volatility makes, because if you're paying so much higher for the crude, which had gone absolutely over $100 per barrel, obviously the rupee loses its listing vis-a-vis the dollar. And all these are all interconnected. As a result of which we find, yes, definitely. I think the chain, the logistic chain would be, once it is established and everybody is sure, if all the refineries know that yes, the crude will reach the LPG, all the refineries here know yes, LPG will reach at a specific time, you will find there's no breakage in supply, resulting in all things getting normal. Obviously, it does help. And I'm sure, hopefully, if the Strait of Hormuz remains open, the deal is sealed on the 19th with a view that there'll be no military interference, no, the kind that we saw where we lost three of our sailors. So all that shouldn't happen because that leads to instability, resulting in all kinds of problems, especially logistics supply. You find even air. The people couldn't fly down to Abu Dhabi, Doha, Riyadh, all over these places, primarily because there was uncertainty, resulting in the routes taking a longer route. Hence, airfares had gone up. Lots of things that happen
Right.
because of these instability, and
That
hence it's very essential that within a
that's
month things will
That's
come.
right, Mr. Kulkarni. I also want you to shed light on when we talk about the implication that will happen after the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. This is also essential to talk about whether it will get reopened or not, because we have seen from experience that we have seen that Hormuz remains a critical, sticky point between US and Iran, both sides refusing to back down on it. And even before June 19, until and unless we finally have a draft on what are the conditions going to be for a toll-free shipping during the through the Hormuz, it's going to be very difficult because the negotiations earlier, what US is saying is that there will be, Donald Trump came out and he announced that now all the ships can pass through it without any fee, without any disruptions. US naval blockade will not be in place. Iran will not disrupt the tankers. But we have also seen Iran coming out and saying that we will talk about the reopening of Hormuz during the 60-day negotiation period as well. So do you think that this is again, there are chances that Hormuz again emerges as a critical point between US and Iran, and both sides might decide not to compromise on it?
See, we'll have to decide as to such a situation must not come up again. Because if Iran has established what they call it the Persian Gulf Strait Authority and decide to impose some kind of a toll or whatever they want to collect, if that be so, then somebody else tomorrow in the state of Malacca would want to do it. If Iran insists that this is not an international strait in international waters, and if all of us seem to feel that, well, it is an international strait, but definitely not in international waters or whatever concessions have been given, and therefore Iran has no right to impose itself on the Strait of Hormuz. Notwithstanding that, I think it's very, very important that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open because it also affects Iran more than anybody else because Iran is exporting oil and almost 80% of the oil is exported to China and 60% of Iran's revenue comes from oil. So you find that if there's a complete blockage Strait of Hormuz by America, maybe by any other country tomorrow, it would result in strangulating Iran. Not only the other countries, the GCC countries, but Iran itself, then leading to the inability of the gas and the crude oil passing through that. So to avoid this kind of a situation in future, it's very essential that some kind of authority or some kind of a international arbitration must be set up that Iran doesn't demand. However, Iran has been insisting, as it is some kind of, you can hear noises wherein President Trump is stated to say that he is not duty bound to release the $300 billion, whereas it is supposedly to be given to, as even stated by Vance. But whatever it be so, it does make a difference, and therefore it's very, very important. And for us, especially in India, where we have about 8 to 10 million people working as the expatriates who are there in these GCC countries, there's so much of money that flows from there to India. We expect a lot of uh, business dealing with them. So much of it happens between these Gulf countries and India, resulting in all of it being affected very badly. Remittances fall down, people feel insecure,
Absolutely.
the subsequent replenishment of logistics that has to happen, it can't happen, business doesn't flow. So there is a lot that was at stake for India. I think hopefully we should be able to restore back once the Strait of Hormuz opens and peace and normalcy is restored in this area.
But Mr. Kulkarni, what do you think that it will mean for India? Do you think that India will emerge as a beneficiary? Because, of course, India relies heavily on the oil imports. Do you think it's going to be game changing for India right now? Because we have seen the fuel prices go up. We have seen a lot of disruption coming up. We have seen some tankers pass through the Hormuz, but it's not enough. How critical it is for India to, get the Hormuz reopen and to stabilize the supply once again?
See, we had a basket of about 40 countries from where we were dependent for crude. Now, from those 40 countries, obviously these countries are far, far away from what the Middle East is from India, resulting in we have to pay for more. Then you have to pay for insurance, you have to pay for its maintenance, everything. All
Right.
of it adds to the cost. Obviously, then so gas would be coming not from one different kinds of crude supplies. The density of sulfur is different from one to the other. Which refinery it must go to. There's so many things that are involved into it. Once we know that for sure there is Gulf, which can't cater for India because Gulf also is producing almost 20 million barrels of oil per day. India's requirement is only about 6 million barrels of oil per day. If there was a possible supply with no breakage and absolutely surety of the supply coming to us, obviously we would much take all of it from the Middle East countries only. But that was not to happen. So, and there are other countries also to which they may be supplying. So we would not be able to get 5 million or 6 million barrels of oil per day from this particular place, which we would much like it. Obviously, Qatar, on which we were dependent on 80 to 90% of LPG, we realized how difficult it suddenly got into. And this is one commodity which cannot be even preserved for long. So there are no storages as such, unless until there's a continuous flow of it. And fortunately for us, it's so close. Middle East is so close to India that the free flow of LPG doesn't really affect because obviously it will be going. And therefore, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and with no military interference from anybody, it would definitely help India and it should help India. Because not just that, you find the problem with Americans is that they don't want, because 80% of the Iranian oil is taken by China.
Right.
And the currency is not dollar. As a result of which, it affected America in that great sense. And now, maybe if America can succeed that all transactions are done in dollar, probably the Strait of Hormuz will not be intervened hereinafter.